did know Rue. She wasn't just my ally, she was my friend. I see her in the flowers that grow in the meadow by my house. I hear her in a Mockingjay song. I see her in my sister Prim. She was too young, too gentle, and I couldn't save her. I'm sorry.
Katniss Everdeen wasn't born to be a symbol. She never craved glory, leadership, or the eyes of the nation. Her story isn't built on prophecy or legacy, it's built on grief and survival. She emerges from a world of scarcity, shaped by trauma, and kept alive by instinct. The story of Katniss is not one of a hero who wanted to save the world, it is the story of a girl who did everything she could to live through it. Today we'll be exploring Katniss across the Hunger Games trilogy, her inner monologue, her psychological complexities, and the symbolic weight she carries. We'll look at her through the eyes of theorists, psychologists, and storytellers. We'll place her beside other dystopian heroines and examine how Suzanne Collins wrote a protagonist who never really claimed the spotlight, even when it burned around her. Chapter 1: The Survivor. Katniss isn't introduced through acts of heroism. She is a hunter, a provider, a teenage girl who carries the weight of a family on her shoulders. After the loss of her father, she steps into the role of caregiver when her mother becomes emotionally unresponsive. At 11 years old, she begins poaching and bartering to keep her sister alive. In District 12, survival becomes an identity. Psychologist Basil van der Kerk in The Body Keeps the Score explains how trauma rewires the brain toward hypervigilance and disconnection. Katniss operates this way throughout the series. Her choices are shaped by instinct and necessity. She protects, she observes, she adapts. Emotion becomes a luxury she rarely allows herself to access. When she volunteers for Prim, it's not about performance. It's not a gesture rooted in political defiance. It is a pure, immediate act of protection. Her identity is interwoven with her sister's safety, a dynamic that forms when caretaking becomes survival. Losing Prim would mean losing the last piece of a childhood already buried.
Prim! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
Katniss doesn't trust easily. She avoids vulnerability, not because she's uncaring, but because it puts her at risk. In her world, openness can be exploited. Emotions can be used against you. Silence becomes protection. Independence becomes survival. We see this throughout the films and how it's used against the other players and victors of the games. She doesn't believe in rebellion or ideologies or transformation for that matter. She believes in staying alive. Her power isn't inherited or mystical. It's earned through hunger, loss, and desperation. Every part of her identity is forged in scarcity, shaped by grief. Her story begins not with a dream, but with the need to survive another day. Chapter 2: The Reluctant Symbol. Katniss becomes the Mockingjay because others make her into one. The Capitol and the Rebellion both seize her image, transforming her into a tool for their agendas. She is filmed, costumed, directed. Her grief is framed into slogans. Her silence becomes a rally cry. Cena's role here is not just artistic. He understands the visual language of revolution. The flaming dress is not decoration. It is an act of rebellion through the mise-en-scene, a concept in film theory that frames costume, setting, and gesture as storytelling. Cinna uses design to communicate resistance without words. Katniss becomes unforgettable not through her voice, but through how she is seen. The flaming dress becomes associated with how we see her and how we remember her. Scholar Laura Mayville's theory of the male gaze explains how women are often framed as objects to be viewed, rather than subjects with agency. Katniss is watched from the moment she enters the games. Her body, her decisions, even her facial expressions are broadcasted, dissected, and consumed. She is made into a spectacle, but her discomfort speaks volumes. Her stiff posture, her minimal eye contact, her resistance to pageantry all express a refusal to play the games. In Mockingjay, she doesn't seek leadership, she negotiates for Peeta's safety. This decision is not selfish, it reflects a psychological need for stability and familiarity. Attachment trauma often leads people to cling to those who represent emotional safety. Peeta is her anchor, and her terms reflect that bond. In Rich Form's idea of freedom from and freedom to captures Katniss's emotional landscape. She seeks freedom from pain, from control, from exploitation. Her rebellion is grounded in personal necessity. Her resistance is formed by grief. Her most memorable acts, Rue's burial, the poisoned berries, the salute, are not calculated. They are born from instinct and emotion. These are moments of refusal, not theatre, but they are captured, edited, and reinterpreted until Katniss becomes more symbol than person. The cost of this transformation is heavy. Every moment of revolution adds to her psychological burden. Each loss leaves a scar. She doesn't ascend into power, she is consumed by what it takes to stay standing. Chapter 3. A Girl at War. Katniss's strength is often visible, but her mind reveals the real war. The books open up a rich inner world of Katniss's thoughts, which are filled with doubt, numbness, and guilt. She questions her humanity. She wonders if survival makes her monstrous. Her narration is practical and emotionally distant.
I no longer feel any allegiance to these monsters called human beings, despite being one myself. I think Peeta was onto something about us destroying one another and letting some decent species take over. Because there is something significantly wrong with a creature that sacrifices our children's lives to settle our differences.
This reflects a state of moral injury, a psychological wound that occurs when someone is forced to participate or to witness acts that violate their values. Combined with symptoms of complex PTSD, Katniss moves through a narrative in a fog of detachment. She is aware of the blood on her hands. She doesn't glorify it. She doesn't seek revenge. She just wants it to stop. When she kills President Coin, it is a final rejection of a cycle that consumes the vulnerable in the name of power. It is a rapture, not a resolution. After the war, Katniss isn't celebrated. She is sedated, isolated, and forgotten. Her healing does not come in dramatic moments. It comes through planting, through memory, through surviving. She doesn't return to who she was. That version of herself has become ash. What remains is someone learning to live inside the silence, moving forward with the hope that the future would be different than the past she has lived in. Chapter 4. Heroines in Fiction. In a genre often filled with chosen ones and visionary leaders, Katniss offers something more raw, an honest portrayal of what it means to endure when the world won't stop taking. Trish Pryor's journey begins with the need to define herself. In the world of Divergent, identity is classified into factions, each representing a core human virtue. Trish chooses Dauntless, a house that represents fearlessness and bravery because it feels bold, pure, and righteous. Her arc is shaped by sacrifice, clarity, and moral pursuit. She moves toward rebellion through ethical awakening. Her decisions stem from wanting to do what is right, even when it costs her her comfort, safety, and her life. Trish doesn't just act from instinct alone, she acts from belief. Her world is painted in values, and her sense of purpose becomes clearer with each choice. She ultimately gives her life for what she believes is just, not because she is forced to, but because she chooses to. Her death is framed as the conclusion of her arc, a deliberate, conscious gift. She is written to be a symbol of hope and truth, embodying a type of heroism that rises out of clear internal compass and unshakable values. Joanna Mason stands as one of the most captivating and tragic figures in dystopian fiction. Emerging from the brutal world of the Hunger Games, she is a survivor not because of brute strength or moral purity, but because of her rage and the armor of bitterness. Unlike Katniss, Joanna's story is soaked in loss and resistance without sentimentality. Her defiance is laced with sarcasm, her vulnerability is buried beneath sharp edges. Joanna won her games by pretending to be weak, luring her enemies into underestimating her before striking them down. That alone set her apart in a genre where women are often allowed to be either soft or strong, but rarely both. Her trauma is not silent, it leaks from her in violent outbursts, bare honesty and visible grief. The Capitol tortured her by taking everything she loved, and unlike Katniss, who still had Peeta, Prim, and Gale, Joanna was left utterly alone. In a landscape of chosen ones and reluctant martyrs, Joanna disrupts the narrative. She is a woman stripped bare, still standing, still furious. Her presence reminds us that dystopian worlds do not only break bodies, they fracture souls. And sometimes survival isn't about saving the world, sometimes it's about dragging your broken self through ashes, daring anyone to try and stop you. Offred lives in the world that silences women at every level. In The Handmaid's Tale, resistance cannot take place in the streets, it takes place inside the mind. Her power lies in remembering who she was, in recounting the names of her daughter, her husband, her mother. She does not raise weapons or stage grand escapes. Instead, she resists through thought, through the careful preservation of self in a system designed to erase her. Margaret Atwood writes, her voice as fractured and poetic, reflecting the emotional dislocation of living under total control. Offred's agency is not in her ability to fight, but in her refusal to forget. She narrates in whispers, she thinks through metaphors, she observes everything. Her survival depends on silence, but her story depends on voice. She is not free, but she is not done. Her memories become rebellion. Her inner monologue is resistance. Every act of mental preservation becomes an act of quiet defiance. Chapter 5. Love as Resistance. Love for Katniss exists within a world of instability, grief, and violence. Attachment is dangerous, and trust is fragile. Her relationships with Peeta and Gale are shaped not by romance in the traditional sense, but by trauma, survival, and emotional protection. The triangle between them does not resolve around desire or rivalry, it reflects the psychological fragmentation of a girl forced to grow up in war. Renee Gillard's theory of mimetic desire says that we desire based on what others desire. Love then becomes entangled in rivalry. But in the context of the Hunger Games, Peeta and Gale both represent more than love. They reflect different versions of Katniss's identity. Gale represents a shared history. He and Katniss survive the same poverty, the same hunger, and the same rage. Their bond is built on familiarity and mirrored pain. But as the war escalates, Gale becomes a figure shaped by vengeance. His strategies embrace utilitarian logic. His love is real, but it grows harder, sharper. For Katniss, already emotionally raw, Gale's version of love becomes a reflection of the fire that consumes everything around it. Peeta, by contrast, is a stabilizing force. In trauma psychology, especially within attachment theory, healing is often found in relationships that offer consistency, emotional safety, and non-demanding presence. Peeta embodies all of this. He sees Katniss without needing her to perform strength. He offers her patience without asking for anything in return. He becomes the metaphorical dandelion in the spring, a symbol of life after famine, of life after suffering. From a film theory perspective, Peeta is constantly lit in warm tones, framed with stillness, and composed in proximity to nature, comfort, and light. Gale, especially in Mockingjay, is shot in darker hues and kinetic movement, emphasizing his intensity and growing distance. The visual language reflects their emotional distance from Katniss's evolving needs. Choosing Peeta is not about romantic heat, it is about peace. In choosing him, Katniss does not surrender, she finally allows herself rest. In a life built on pain, Katniss lets herself choose peace. I have a whole character analysis on Peeta. If you guys would like to check that out, I'll leave the link in the description. Katniss Everdeen was a girl in the right place at the right time when whispers of a revolution was reaching its boiling point. She is a girl who was used, silenced, and broken, and still she kept going. Her strength is not in her victories, but in her endurance. She loves through pain, she protects through fear, and she never stops walking forward. This is not a happy ending, but a reflection of real life suffering. She chooses peace. She chooses stillness. Her legacy is not about violence, it is about survival with integrity. Her name is not remembered because she led, her name is remembered because she endured. And now the girl on fire can be laid to rest, and Katniss Everdeen can finally live. Hello everyone, thank you so much for your support, and I hope you really enjoy this video, and thank you so much for the love I got for my Jacob Black video. I've been trying to reply to all of your comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
There's a cat here. It isn't an average cat. It's got human eyes. That isn't how cats are built. Human eyes. And that's not how cats are built.
Peeta!